This podcast is part of the Big Heads Media Podcast Network. Go to bigheadsmedia.com for more great podcasts.
And now, on with the show.
Hey everyone, welcome to...
We're watching here.
This is Opinionated Movie Talk with Chris and Perry. My name is Chris Williams. With me, he is the brooding hero to my dead wife, Perry Seibert.
All right. I think we need to come up with we need to find the brooding wife dead hero movie. Let's see.
Oh, that is... well, if you're wondering what movies the brooding hero might have a dead wife, we are going to be talking about Christopher Nolan's filmography today. As Tenet hits theaters that are nowhere near us, we're going to talk a little bit about his filmography and, whether or not we think he is the last hope for cinema that he is setting himself up to be these days. I am looking forward to that conversation. But before we do, Perry, what have you been watching?
I recently had the pleasure of revisiting Barry Lyndon, Stanley Kubrick's Barry Lyndon, for the first time since I was in college. So it's a very long time ago. And it was an experience unlike any other that I can remember because I remember liking the movie. I know it's a controversial movie. A lot of people hate it because they think it's slow and boring. I had this weird thing where over the course of this 3-hour movie, I had forgotten entire chunks of plot. Like I couldn't remember what exactly happened next. But as every scene unfolded, I felt like I remembered each and every shot. Like there were no surprises about what I was looking at. And it was nice to rediscover what actually happens in it. And I've never had a revisit quite like that. And it was pretty great. So yes, it was nice to revisit that beautiful Criterion Blu-ray of Barry Lyndon, which I bought years ago when it came out and had never put in the machine.
Very nice. I finally got to dip into some of my Criterions. That's not what I've been watching, but my wife and I watched Lost in America a few weeks ago. I had bought that on Blu-ray about a year ago, and she had not seen it, and so we watched that.
The core of the nest egg.
Oh.
The core of the nest egg.
Everything in Vegas in that movie is just perfection. I mean, most of that movie is perfection, but that stretch in Vegas from Frank Marshall to the Hoover Dam. No, Gary Marshall. Sorry, Gary Marshall to the Hoover Dam is just it's perfect. And then I was at Barnes and Noble and they had Boyhood on sale, and so I picked up the Criterion of that. But what I have been watching is not nearly as prestigious as Barry Lyndon. But I wanted to talk about it a little bit. I caught up with the latest DC movie, Birds of Prey, on HBO Max from earlier this year. And I will say, this is a movie I had no interest in when it came out. I am not the biggest fan of what DC is doing. If you go back and listen to our Joker argument from a year ago, you'll find that me and DC don't always get along. And I thought this was a lot of fun. Did you see this? It was one of the last movies... It was one of the last movies people could go see in the before times.
I did not go see this. I could not care less. No, I did not bother.
I will say I had a really good time with this. I had fun with it and liked it. I wouldn't go so far. It's not great, and I think it's barely good, but it's fun. It is a movie that is way too convoluted for its own good. It backs up in telling its story about 20 times just so it can pad out the plot a little bit and get to that runtime up. But Margot Robbie is so much fun to watch as Harley Quinn. She's really having a great time, and she actually creates a character with that. Like you feel for her even as she's a self-described terrible person. Rosie Perez is a lot of fun as this kind of walking, talking 80s cliche that the movie calls out for being an 80s cop cliche. Mary Elizabeth Winstead is very funny as a very socially awkward vigilante. And Ewan McGregor is just this very flamboyant, perfect villain. And it really shocked me. I kind of turned it on. It was really just I needed to burn some time on Saturday, and I pulled up HBO Max, and that was like
there it was.
Literally, that's what it was. But I had also spent the whole day kind of bouncing back and forth on my phone between stuff coming out from the DC fan event they were doing, and I gotta say, like, I've been very vocal about how much I enjoy the Marvel movies, and the DC movies I don't, and it's a lot of it because I don't understand what the hell they're doing half the time, because Marvel, you go in there and you know what you're getting. Like, it's a 20-hour long or 20-movie long TV show at this point. You know exactly what it's going to look like. You know what the basic plot structure is going to be. You know what the tone of it's going to be. And if you like that, it's great fun. If you don't like that, I totally get it. But I find DC to be just this weird, bonkers entity that is veering back and forth from whatever James Gunn is doing with Suicide Squad, which looks like this very, kind of in-your-face, fun 70s war flick, to whatever Joker was, which was the ultra-serious, ultra-grim version of that, to a Batman movie that, I mean, I think it's refreshing, but they're going to go and make a dark and gritty Batman movie, which... I mean, finally, but
what we've all been waiting for.
But then they're also going to release that at the same time. There's a Flash movie that has Ben Affleck and Michael Keaton playing their Batman characters. So I have no idea what the hell is going on there. But I found it kind of fascinates me in a way Marvel doesn't, because even though I dislike half the choices they make, it's a lot of fun to watch that play out, and when it hits, it usually hits pretty well. Like, I thought Shazam was a lot of fun. I thought, I've heard very good things about Aquaman. And Birds of Prey is kind of that, it's colorful. It looks like no other comic book movie I've seen, because they're playing with big, bright colors, but mixing it in with ultra violence in a way that is just, it's fun. Its aesthetic is more Tim Burton than Christopher Nolan, or, God forbid, Zack Snyder.
Yes, God forbid, Zack Snyder.
Yeah. So I wanted to mention that because it's just this very weird little comic book movie that is the type of weird that DC sometimes does really right, that makes it in a way more fascinating to me than what Marvel's doing, because even though I'll probably go into a Marvel movie and like it, I know what I'm getting. And DC, it's just like, all right, let's try this out. And I find that a fascinating way of them making movies, that they're just throwing everything at the wall, and some of it'll stick, but none of it looks the same, and I kind of appreciate that.
I guess we just chalk that up to historically Warner Brothers is a far more interesting studio than Disney.
Yes. So that's Birds of Prey. It's on HBO Max. If you're folding laundry, it's fine to turn on. That's my
I would
high
like
praise.
to point out that when this airs, although not when we recorded it, if you wanted to jump back just a little bit, there's a whole collection of Albert Brooks films on the Criterion Channel this month.
Are there
September.
really?
So, yes, they're going to have the first 5 or 6 of them.
Oh,
Real Life,
fantastic.
Modern Romance, Defending Your Life, Lost in America. What came next? Not the Mother. Mother's there.
Okay.
I think it's those 5.
I don't know if you remember a few years ago, maybe it was like 5 or 6 years ago, Netflix did that. They signed a deal with Albert Brooks, and they put, I think, all of those movies on Netflix. And it was really this moment of hope, like, oh, is Netflix actually going to be working with filmmakers? Are they going to be putting old movies on Netflix? Will there actually be good vintage titles? And they were on there for literally about a month, and then they got pulled. But in that time, I was able to see Defending Your Life, and I think that's when I saw Lost in America for my first time. And
Excellent.
And knowing they're going to be on Criterion, I hadn't seen that yet, but that is fantastic, because I will be checking those out, because his brand of humor, just like it's one of those things that, like, I kind of tune to that. Like, it's like a tuning fork. It just works real well.
One of the best stories in the history of Hollywood to me is the dearly departed Carl Reiner on The Tonight Show in the 70s, and being asked, well, who makes you laugh? And he says, well, I'll tell you, my son Rob has a best friend named Albert, and he might be the funniest person I know. He was a teenager. They were literally teenagers at the time. Albert Brooks has been funny his entire life.
Well, I've had I've been going back and watching old Simpsons episodes on Disney Plus, and I'll make a special point just to go watch the episodes where he guest stars.
Oh yeah,
because he is dependably hilarious in those. I've watched the Hank Scorpio one about 4 or 5 times in the last few months. So that's what we've been watching, but I will definitely be adding those Albert Brooks ones to my Criterion because that is good to know. We're going to get into talking about Christopher Nolan in just a moment, but I guess it's kind of preamble. As we're recording this, movie theaters are starting to open back up in areas across the country. I know Russell Crowe, he brought whatever the hell Unhinged is out last week. And
the blockbuster summer hit of 2020.
Yeah, and I don't know if you've seen this, but there's been press releases they've been putting out basically touting, 97% of people say they felt completely safe at Unhinged.
Yes.
They felt safe, and it's this urging, like, get back to the movie theaters. And then, as we're recording this, yesterday, Tom Cruise pulled his latest death-defying stunt by going to a movie theater to see Tenet, and basically recording it and putting it on Twitter as kind of a, don't be a pansy, get back to the movie theaters. So we live in Michigan, and theaters have not been open, at least in lower Michigan, since March. They're available up north, but theaters haven't opened here. We don't know when we're getting Tenet. We don't know when theaters are reopening. But I thought it would be an interesting thing just to toss by you. When theaters do open here, what is it going to take to get you to go back? Do you think you'll be in a theater this year?
No. No, I don't think I'll be in a theater this year. I am dubious that there will be anything approaching a normal release schedule, and so I don't know what it would take.
Yeah,
I don't know what film would have to appear for me to go, okay, I guess I'll try that. It feels very unimportant compared to my health at this point.
Yeah, early July, we took our kids up north. We went to Mackinac, and in northern Michigan, movie theaters are open. So you'd be walking around some of the cities up there, and they had theaters that were showing, The Goonies and Back to the Future and Jaws. And there was like a brief second where I was tempted to be like, "Oh, kids, you haven't seen Back to the Future. Let's go do this." And then the thought of sitting in basically a box with other people for 2 hours.
Yeah.
I'm like, no, that does not sound like something I would like to do right now. And we're not overly cautious. Like we're cautious, but we've done stuff. Like we went to a amusement park a month ago. So we went down to Kings Island and rode roller coasters and everything. And I did that, and it felt safe. I still would not go into a movie theater. I would rather go to a amusement park than go into a movie theater because it's something about being in the outdoors. I could put space between myself and others. You weren't trapped in there for 2 hours. And there's no version in my head where I go to a movie theater and it's not playing that scene from Outbreak where they're all in the theater spreading that virus in there.
Yeah. It's more a matter of I can't even get to the hypothetical. I can't imagine a normal slate of releases, and so I'm not even really seriously considering the question, honestly. I'm saying nothing because I can't believe I'm going to be put in a situation where I have to actually make this decision. You know what I mean? I don't care enough about Tenet that I have to see it in the theater. I'll be fine if I see it done video in a month, because Warner Brothers ain't going to be able to hold it for long. And let's be real clear on why this is happening. It's not just the fact that theaters are reopening here. It's that theaters are really open in Europe and China. Mm-hmm. And it's actually, and this is weird because we're talking about this before it happens, but it's going to air after it's happened. Tenet's going to open here Labor Day weekend. It's opening in the UK and Ireland the weekend before. We're not getting it first. We're not getting it at the same time. And so I'm curious if they're only putting it out in theaters here because Nolan doesn't want a situation where part of the world has seen it and can spoil it for the rest of the world.
I've thought about that.
I really wonder if that's part of it as well. So, we're this is an interesting thing to talk about. Why is it happening? Is it happening because this is the compromise that Nolan and Warner Brothers have come to? Is it because Nolan thinks this is as good as it's going to get? I don't know. And I'm curious if it comes out why this decision was made now.
Well, I know Nolan's been very outspoken that he wants Tenet to be the movie that reopens theaters. And he's very particular about how his movies are seen. He hates spoilers, so I would not be surprised if that is part of it. But he's also, he does not want them releasing it to HBO Max or wherever Warner Brothers would release it, because for him, it's sacrilege to be able to watch his spy movie on a phone I don't want, but he's going so far as to, they're going so far as to say also, like, we have drive-in movie theaters open here in the Detroit area, but we don't have indoor theaters open. So Warner Brothers has said Tenet can't be shown at drive-ins where there are not indoor theaters open. And I can only think that's to keep it from being spoiled or things like that.
I don't know what it is. I don't know if they think that I don't know if that's Nolan's call or Warner Brothers' call. And I can't understand the logic either way. This is is it Nolan that he wants people to see it in the theater so he will keep it from you if the theater is not an option at all? Is it Warner Brothers figuring this is the way to maximize the box office on this? Notice I didn't say profits. I said box office, because I don't think this film can make a profit.
No.
At least here. Worldwide it's going to, but it's not going to do nearly what it would have done otherwise here in the States. I just don't know, and it must be driving Nolan absolutely insane.
Yeah, it's fascinating. And I've started to think, I'm like, what would get me back into a movie theater? And the more I think about it, I'm like, you can have as many rules as you want about wearing a mask, about social distancing and things like that. I've been in theaters where they have big, bold letters telling people don't text or talk, and people don't really pay attention to that. And they're not going to stop selling food because that's where the theaters make their money. So you're going to have people eating and laughing and breathing and talking. So until, like, it's a little safer on the news, like I'm seeing, that there's a very low case rate, or a vaccine would be even better. I'm not even thinking about it. But I'm also like, the first movie that comes back after we're back to whatever normal is, there's going to be a pent-up demand for that. And it's like you could release Unhinged at that point, and it would be huge because it's the one movie everyone can see. Tenet, they're taking a loss on this, like you said. And I can't imagine there's not going to be a re-release in 6 months if the world's in better shape, that they're not going to say, you missed it the first time, now go see Tenet.
Oh, I'm sure he'll re-edit it into some 4.5-hour cut. That's my prediction. This is how Warner Brothers would talk Nolan into this. They're saying, hey, guess what? You can do whatever you want to it. Let us put it out now. Do whatever you want to it. We'll re-release it in 6 months as the director's cut.
Well, no. That cut is chopped up into hour-long chunks and put on HBO Max. So that's why we're getting a 4-hour Justice League movie.
Yes, of course. That's...
But here's what I find interesting, and this kind of leads into, we're going to be talking about Nolan. I find it interesting / bizarre that Christopher Nolan, a director who's made many movies I like that we are going to talk about in a minute, is kind of the one that people are pinning hopes on of going back to the movies. Because, I don't know, what do you think of when you think of what you're missing at the movies?
Well, nothing's playing.
Okay,
all I'm missing is the sense. I mean,
but the experience.
Compared. I mean, you mean if I see a movie not in a theater?
Right.
Do you mean that? What am I missing that wise?
I guess I can say what I was thinking. Like when I think of what I miss about being at the movie theater, it's being with people, seeing movies that are joyful or that shed some light on humanity, that we're sharing this experience together, and it's kind of uplifting, or it's making me think a little bit deeper about things. And usually, I've been thinking about experiences I've been missing have been these very human, uplifting experiences. And I find it odd that Christopher Nolan would be the one that everyone's pinning their hopes on, because that's not what I get from his movies. As much as I like them, he is not, like, I don't get that inspirational pull. I get a very cold feeling from a lot of his movies.
Yeah, well, yeah, he's a cold director. He's one of the few, dare I say, okay, I won't say only. He is absolutely one of the very, very few directors who can get away with marketing the film as the new Christopher Nolan movie. Spielberg can't do it. It's no guarantee. No one saw BFG. Case in point. I mean, it's not. There is no guarantee that a Spielberg film is going to light the world on fire.
Yeah.
And Nolan is on a run here of, well, at least 5 films that were, two of. I mean, there's only one that was. There's only one that's truly feels like it was sold on him without the benefit of a giant star or some flashy product to dangle in front of everybody. But still, Nolan's name carries weight with the young movie-going public. And by young, in this case, I mean 20-somethings and 30-somethings. I don't even mean teenagers. It feels like an event film. He knows how to put that together, how to stage that, and how to make that happen. So, I mean, I can see why for ego reasons he would think he could be the one to do this. And he may be right. I mean, he's not, because there aren't enough theaters open right now. Mm-hmm. But yes, I mean, all things being equal, yeah, I don't think it's unreasonable that he's the one that's going to take a crack at it. But as for what I miss all. The type of film to me doesn't that's not what I think about when I think about what I'm missing at a theater. Mm-hmm. Oh, what I miss is, and we've talked about it. For me, the theatrical experience is this very zen thing for me, where I have to pay attention. I have to give myself over to this thing. I cannot hit a pause button. I cannot stop it. I have to lose myself in what is happening in front of me. It gets me out of myself. And that's what I miss. And I don't really, yes, it'd be great to see a great comedy and laugh with a bunch of strangers. It'd be great to see a great thriller and gasp with everybody at the same time. But, that's what I'm missing. And the odds of me feeling that I'm going to have that spiritual experience at Tenet feels pretty low. So I'm not, this is not the one that hurts if I don't go see it.
Yeah, I'm the same way.
Theater.
I'm the same way. And I like a lot of his movies. There have been several of his films that I think have ended up on my top 10 list at the end of the year. But I also have no problem if I have to see this on, HBO Max, or I rent it on Google Play in 2 months. I'm fine with that, because what I want from the movie theater is to leave feeling like, I don't know, I've been elated somehow. I've learned something. And the funny thing about Chris Nolan is there's a lot of his movies I really like, and I leave very impressed and very high on them. And I don't go back and revisit them hardly at all. His films are very idea driven, and they're very, very interested in this very clockwork plotting, or this very inventive way of telling the story, and playing around with time in it. But there's usually not enough there from the human perspective for me to really want to go back and rewatch them. If I do, it's because, there's some sort of puzzle piece that I want to pick up on. Which I guess that's been the way with him from the start. With Memento.
Yes and no. Because so my argument to you would be, I agree with you for the most part, and the case that you can make is, what are the great performances in Nolan films? And I can only, if you ask me that straight up, only 2 come to mind. I had to sit there and think about them.
What are the 2?
It's not like, for me it would be, for me it's Guy Pearce in Memento. Mm-hmm. And also Joey Pants. Joey Pants is fantastic in that movie. And it's Heath Ledger,
yes,
which is just sort of larger than life. I mean, that's not about touching human emotion. That's about I listened to James Corden in an interview a few weeks ago talk about how there are 2 types of great actors. There are everymen, the people who just like Tom Hanks, you're like, yes, that's me up there. And then there are the aliens, where you just watch him, you go, I don't know how you're doing that, but that's the most amazing thing I've ever seen. You know, your Daniel Day-Lewis's, your Ben Wishaw's, and you know, that is one of the great alien performances of all time.
Yes, and I might have misspoke. I think my fascination with him as putting together puzzles began with Memento, but I don't find that a particularly cold film. I really like Memento and Guy Pearce and Joey Pance's performance, but no, I really like Memento, and I think it's the rare film by him that doesn't feel completely cold.
Yeah.
But
yeah.
I do. Have you? Oh, go ahead.
Have you ever seen Following?
I have not seen Following. No, that's the only one.
It's interesting. I mean, it is Memento is obviously, you know, following version 0.2. I mean, they're not the same film, but they are very similar. And it is interesting to note the differences between them. That, you know, Following is real British.
Okay.
And Memento is a Brit's feeling for LA. I mean, part of the reason Memento works for me is it is so square in the tradition of the LA noir film. Mm-hmm. It works in that way, and in a lot of other ways too. I agree. I think Memento is fantastic. I even think Memento is his best movie.
I 100% agree.
And I think that, yeah, I think he is a director for whom more money has not been helpful.
No, I was thinking that as well. Yeah, I saw Memento at a crappy theater in Warren for like $1.50. I had heard some people say good things. It popped up at the cheap show, so I went and saw it, and like it was one of those things where you left feeling like your brain was scrambled. I did not understand what I had just seen, because I was trying to piece together, because the buzz on it had been it's the movie that's told backwards, which isn't really true. It's not totally accurate. But when you watch it, and I watched it several times after that, and what I loved was the way that it's told, you know, backwards, forwards, starts at the middle, but there is an emotional through line to that. That is why that structure works so well. I know there was a big deal made when they put it out on DVD or Blu-ray that you could watch it in chronological order, and I remember thinking that just seems like such a waste of time, because that the whole point of the movie is that it's fractured like this because that's the mindset of Guy Pearce's character. It doesn't work. It doesn't make that point if you watch it from the beginning, so to speak.
Yes.
But yeah, I loved Memento, and I think it is. He does these experiments where I don't know if I've seen anyone other than maybe Richard Linklater be so obsessed with how you can play with time on film. Whereas I think Linklater is the more humanist explorer of that. Nolan is very much interested in how you can structure movies around time. So Inception plays so much with that, which that's what I walked away most impressed with Inception, was the way the different dream sequences build on each other. And so you're in this sequence, but it's really, you know, it's playing out. What plays out 5 minutes here is really 2 hours in this other layer. And I thought that was fantastic. And then Interstellar, he plays with that a little bit more. And then Dunkirk, which I think is his other best film. It's this whole it's a whole experiment about that. Like, how can I stretch out? How can I constrict time? And I find I love that movie. I think it works really well as that experiment. But I also find those movies don't leave me going back to think, wow, what a great character Luke Cobb is. I think that was DiCaprio's name. Or I really resonated with Tom Hardy's character in Dunkirk. They're experiments, and they work like that, but they don't really stick after a while.
Yeah, yes, he's interested in how you can manipulate time, where Linklater is interested in about how time affects characters and about how your experience of time affects the characters, as opposed to just being, how can I get around this construct that we have? Yeah. Which is exactly what Nolan is doing for far too much of his career.
But I do also think it's fascinating. Like you said, he's one of the rare filmmakers who can still open a giant movie on his name, but he can also deliver a movie that gets really strong performance on ideas that, you know, you wouldn't see Disney doing Inception. You know what I mean? You wouldn't see them taking a risk on a big budget sci-fi movie that is sort of about dream logic, but we can get to that in a moment, but is really just this weird clockwork playing with time, and there's no comic book it's based on, there's no source material, and it's really going to take about 2 of the 2.5 hours to explain it all to you. Which is the other frustration, is he loves to explain things to you.
Well, or he doesn't do so well enough. In the case of Interstellar, you know.
Yeah. Well, Interstellar is, to me, that's where he tried to be very emotional. And I believe Spielberg was at one point attached to Interstellar. And there are moments where I feel like he's trying to head into that Spielberg sentimental territory.
Oh, yes.
And it does not work. Like, I don't know if he just doesn't have the that's not his capability. But I find Interstellar fascinating.
No, it is not.
Like, I remember going to see Ad Astra about a year ago and thinking, oh, that was the movie I had hoped Interstellar would be in many ways.
Yes.
Which is a very, just focused sci-fi movie. And Interstellar goes into some weird places at the end that I didn't expect that don't work. Like, they just flat out don't work. And I think he's trying to deliver that human moment. And I'm like, that's not your strength, man. I appreciate the attempt, but stick to the wormholes and things like that. That's where I was most gripped with in that movie.
Yes, the Kubrick film he needs to study is The Killing, not 2001. He would be much better off. Just give him a $10 million budget, 2 really good actors, and a nice twisty script, and he would deliver something that we would be talking about for years. But he doesn't have it. His canvas is too large for his own good.
Well, I think of him, and I think of I see a lot of James Cameron in him, where after a certain point, it's about the toys. It's about what else can I do that hasn't been done before? How do I make it look as big and expensive as possible? But Cameron's always had a better handle on the human element of that. Or
ooh,
I find I like Cameron.
Okay,
I like Cameron. That might be a discussion for another day. But I feel like Cameron, at least, I don't know, like he creates characters who I enjoy watching over and over.
And I think Cameron dislikes people, where I think Nolan doesn't understand people. There's a difference.
Oh, that's fair.
I find genuine misanthropy in much of Cameron's work.
I hadn't thought of that, but that's another.
True Lies is an execrable movie.
Yes,
True Lies is a really execrable movie. It's really awful. It is truly an inhuman film in so many ways, and that he is way. There's a reason a robot is the most beloved character in all of Cameron's work. He doesn't like people.
Well, but I think the further he goes on too, it's more about he wants to play with those toys more and more, which is what I see with Nolan too.
See, and for me, I don't think it's a reliance on that. I think it's. I mean, I'm agreeing with you in principle, but I don't think it's about the hardware. I think it's about. Yeah, I think he gets stuck in what can I stretch? What is the concept I can play with? Can I bend time this way? And that's different to me than how realistic can I make the robot metal turn back human?
Fair
I think
enough.
It's a much more interesting question that I would much rather someone wrestle with than what I think interests, if anything, Cameron at this point.
Fair enough. But going back to that too, like you think of his third film, Insomnia, the remake of the was it Norwegian?
Is it Norwegian or Scandinavian?
Yeah. Which
it's a really good movie.
It is. It's really good.
The original's a really good movie.
And I remember seeing Insomnia. I think I saw it like 2 times in theaters, even the Nolan one. And I liked it. I remember liking it when I saw it. I have not seen it in years. But it was more the concept, what does being awake all day or being in a land where the sun never sets do to a person? It was that concept. But then you see the original film, which is really just it's got a little bit of eroticism in there. It's passionate. It feels like it's about actual people, whereas the Nolan one feels like a concept. It feels like a ready-made thriller, whereas the original feels like this really dangerous thing in many ways.
I do think Pacino's excellent in it. I think it's one of my favorite later period Pacino performances. He's really strong in it, especially in the first half hour. And I love Martin Donovan is an actor who I don't see anymore, who I really liked in that time period a lot. And he's Pacino's partner. Their interplay in the first half hour of the movie I really like, and that movie stuck with me for that more than for anything else. It pales compared to the original, but it's fine. I thought it was a good big budget step up from Memento for him. I was not displeased.
I think it was more because I saw the original about a year or two ago for a class I was taking, and I think it was at that moment I was like, oh, Nolan's film didn't do this. Yeah. And I think that's when it hit me. I don't think his version is a bad movie, and I really actually like Robin Williams in that one. I remember that was about the same time that 1 Hour Photo came out, and I actually preferred his kind of villainous take in this one as opposed to 1 Hour Photo. But I think it's a good, capable movie, but it shows me he is not interested in a lot of the human things that the original was. Like he's more interested in kind of the more standard police thriller, which is fine. Yeah. It's a good movie. It's just it's where I first started noticing, oh, this tendency is there. And then he did Batman, and that's when he became the household name. And I really like 2 of 3 of his Batman movies.
That's one more than I like.
Okay, which I like Batman Begins quite a bit.
I don't.
Okay, and why?
Because why do you like it? Other than it's Batman, it's fine. I don't hate it, but I finish it. I'm like, wow, now you're not interesting. You were interesting to this point. Now I don't know if you're actually interesting.
I don't think it's great, but I do enjoy it quite a bit because I like the fact that it's playing with some ideas that Batman movies hadn't dealt with at that time. Just the idea behind the symbolism. I like the look of it too, though. I love that it gets this rap for being the quote unquote realistic Batman movie, and it's not. It's a movie that looks very stylized in certain places, and it plays into almost this mythic identity of the character. He's kind of building that myth back up. And I remember going to see it opening night and just being very, very taken by it. Not to the extent I really liked that I liked Dark Knight, but I enjoy that. I like Christian Bale's performance in that quite a bit, and I really like oh gosh, I'm blanking on
Cillian Murphy.
Cillian Murphy, thank you. Yes.
Yeah, he's the best thing in it for me.
There are just some really fun performances. Tom Wilkinson just devours the entire scenery in it, and I love watching him in that. I think it's just a fun movie. I think it's a fun take on Batman that I hadn't seen at that point before. Unfortunately, now every take on Batman is that take. But
well, my problem is that fun is not. That's not an adjective that comes in the first 10. If I'm going to describe that movie, that movie's so brooding. It's not fun, and I don't think it deals with. I don't know whether it's for me. It was just that was a point where I was really, really, really having a hard time with Christian Bale. Problems that he has since rectified for me, thankfully, and also Katie Holmes.
Oh, Katie Holmes is awful in that. Yes.
I mean, you've left me nothing to care about, so all I'm looking at is the iconography, and I don't care enough about the iconography for you to have done anything I care about. Liam Neeson's good in it, but Liam Neeson's good in everything,
I enjoy it. I enjoy it. I wouldn't put up too much of a fight for it, but I do enjoy it quite a bit. But a lot of it just comes from my personal enjoyment of the character. But I really like Dark Knight. I think Dark Knight is a fantastic comic book movie, and a fantastic crime movie as well.
I will say it's a fantastic comic book movie, and I do not mean to sound like I am giving it minor praise at that. I wanted to talk about how much I dislike Batman Begins just so I could stress how much I think The Dark Knight works. And short of the sheer insanity of the contrivance of him planting the cell phone in the tummy of a dude that's going to go off right when he's got to have the commissioner someplace across. If it just hadn't gotten that convoluted, I would think it's as good as everybody else thinks it is. It's almost a great crime film. It is a great comic book film, and it's a great piece of pop culture. It really does capture something that I cannot articulate any other way. Yes, he owes a lot to Heath Ledger, who is better than anyone could have possibly imagined in the part. Boy, Maggie Gyllenhaal's an upgrade.
Yes, 100%.
Boy, I'm happy to have Aaron Eckhart along. He's a really good actor for Nolan. Yeah, that all works. But let's not skip over what comes in between.
Is that The Prestige?
That is The Prestige, which is where I go, oh, you know what? You're interesting again.
Okay, I have not seen The Prestige since theaters. And I remember that came out the same year as The Illusionist, and I know they both kind of blur in my head, but I really did find Prestige interesting, but I don't remember much of it.
It is. I would encourage you to go back to it.
Okay.
It is the one that is. It was his last gasp at being human. There is a heartbeat underneath all that. I'm not saying it's loud. I'm not saying it's prominent, but I am saying it's there, and not in the perfunctory way that it feels like it's tacked into Insomnia or Inception for me. It works. It works in surprising ways. I like it. I genuinely think it's the kind of movie that I'm so glad you do after you have a success with Batman Begins.
It's been on a list for a revisit for a long time and just has not gotten around there. I remember really enjoying it when I saw it, but yeah, I could not. I remember basically how it ended, and I remember David Bowie's in there, I believe, right?
Yes, that's Nikola Tesla.
Okay, that is the movie I remember then. But it's overdue for a rewatch for me because I know a lot of people really, really love it, and for me, it's just I have not seen it since theaters, so I need to. But after Dark Knight, he did Inception, which I have a weird relationship with that movie in that I remember seeing it and being very enthralled by it and just thinking, oh wow, this is so amazing to see on a giant screen. I think when he started working with IMAX, he started doing some. That's when he kind of started playing around a little bit more and having a little more fun visually. Because there's some really fun stuff in Inception that works from a visual perspective. I love the city folding up, the fight in the hallway that's rotating. But the thing that's always bugged me about Inception is it's a movie that takes place in dreams that feels nothing like a dream.
This is A.O. Scott. A.O. Scott wrote the definitive line about the movie for me, and I give him full credit for it. Where yes, Nolan has created a movie that exists only in dreamscapes, and he is a director who is inherently incapable of understanding dreamscapes. He's so mired in logic.
Yeah.
Even his dreamscapes are presented in concentric circles that interlock. Like, no, that's not David Lynch's Inception. That I want to see.
Yes. I've thought about that before.
That said, and I don't think Inception succeeds, which is different than saying I don't think it works. I don't think it succeeds at what it's trying to do as well as it could otherwise. But I will say this for it: have you ever seen Last Year at Marienbad?
Yes, I have, years and years ago in college.
So for me, Last Year at Marienbad was the first time I saw a movie that felt like, oh, this is music. I'm not supposed to follow this logically. This is all about rhythm and repetition and mood, and I give Inception full credit for doing that. I know that, it's fun to knock him for explaining everything. Mm-hmm. I honestly don't remember this. I like the film enough that I don't remember all the scenes of explaining in Inception. I remember the pull of the editing. I remember the tone. I remember the feel. I remember the look. And I will give him a lot of credit for that. And again, I think it's an incredibly, for all of my problems with it, I just love that he chose to do it after Dark Knight.
Yeah,
he made really interesting attempts after all of the Batman movies, which is why I don't care to dismiss him at any point just yet.
Well, that's what you can do after you have a Dark Knight, is you can say, okay, I did this $1 billion hit for you, so now I'm going to do this thing I've had kicking around in my brain. There's a lot I like about Inception. I think its logic, the way it wants to be so logical, is what kind of stops it from being great for me.
Yeah.
Because I want those dream sequences to be unhinged. Like, I want there to be danger and surrealness there. Because visually, it does some very surreal things. And he does some really interesting things with the theme that plays whenever they kick back, and how that plays at different speeds and kicks them back into whatever the next time thing is. But then it's all tied to, well, we have to do this by this, or else that doesn't make sense. It just kind of ruins the sense of danger for me. But there's a lot I enjoy about it. I really like Tom Hardy in that one. That was my introduction to Tom Hardy, mm-hmm. And I thought he was fun. And I like DiCaprio in most things, so I thought he was fun to watch.
It is easy to say that Marianne Cotillard gives the best performance by any actress in any Christopher Nolan movie in that film.
Yeah,
it's a very one-note character, but she's very memorable.
Yeah, I enjoy it. I find I don't love it as much as other people do, but it's another one that's overdue for a revisit. But after that came The Dark Knight Rises, which I'm not going to be revisiting anytime soon.
Oh, it's wretched.
It's
really bad. It's really, really bad.
I've never watched a movie where I thought, wow, the filmmaker did not want to make this movie.
Yeah.
Which is very true. He did not want to make a third Batman movie after Heath Ledger died. And
he didn't.
Yeah.
Good on him.
Well, I think there are things set up in that movie that I think could have worked really well. The whole idea, the whole theme of that whole franchise is that eventually Bruce Wayne will get to stop being Batman and Gotham will right itself, right? Like, that's the idea they're playing with at the first and second movie. And in the third, there's a place where they could do that. It should have been called Gotham City for the first thing. But it should have been more about that instead of whatever the hell it was, breaking his back. And I don't know, like, there was so much going on that just never made sense for me in that. Like, it felt so inert the entire time. Yeah.
It's dull and boring and ugly and so not interesting. And and if nothing else, it shows how good The Dark Knight is.
Yeah.
It shows how easily all of this stuff can go way, way wrong.
Yeah. Yeah, and I remember that was the same summer as the Avengers. And I remember just thinking, nope, Dark Knight Rises, that's the one to beat. I can't wait to see that. And I saw it at, I think I saw it at IMAX screening at Henry Ford the night before it opened. And it was one of those experiences, I think I said The Lost World was like this for me, where I'm sitting there watching it thinking, I like this, right? This is good, right? I enjoy this. So, a week later was my birthday and it was out. So I told my wife, I'm like, oh, we're going to go see Dark Knight Rises. You're going to love this. It's great. And I was so bored watching the entire thing. Like, I actively, and it didn't help that we went and saw Beasts of the Southern Wild right before we saw that. So I left a movie I really loved. I left a movie I loved that was really beautiful to go see this gray slog that just never once worked in that second viewing. It just
that that girl's still singing the anthem. That's never ends. Oh my God, that's so awful.
Yeah, that's a bad one. And then what came after that? Was that Interstellar after that?
Yeah.
Which, yeah, we've talked about that.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was
end
one.
Of the reconnaissance. Yeah.
There is one sequence in that I find works for me, and it works on a human level too for me. And it's where he's been on that planet where time moves differently. He comes back and watches the video of his kids, and he watches them age, like however many years, like 20 years, and those 30 seconds. That's the one moment in the movie that works for me, and that's about it. And that's all McConaughey.
I could be hard pressed to name an actor more ill fit for Nolan than McConaughey. All of what McConaughey does well is what Nolan is not interested in.
He's so loose.
I just think that's a miscast from the beginning. Like, that doesn't work. And I think the movie bears that out. Yes, you're right. It's the one moment. I think he thinks he's going to bring something to it, but Nolan set it up so he can't. I mean, God, the only thing I remember about that movie, and I have not revisited it since I saw it in the theater, the only thing I remember in any great detail is the sheer joy when Matt Damon shows up. Like, oh my God, thank you. Someone who can't help but bring life into whatever he's in. And then he's gone. And then I'm stuck watching his attempt at Spielberg. Yes, that's exactly what the end of that film is.
Yeah, it's very much him trying to do the Spielbergian ending, and there's a reason why Spielberg is usually the only one who gets away with that, and why Spielberg couldn't get away with that after a while.
And even then, only some of the time. Yes.
And then there was Dunkirk, which I really like. Dunkirk. I think, like I said, I think it's an experiment that I enjoy watching as an experiment. I don't think it ever connects with me on a human level, but I find it an interesting approach. Like, I enjoyed him pulling off the way he played with time in that. I thought that was very successful. And an almost silent movie or dialogue-free movie is probably really good for him sometimes.
Yes and no. It works. I think it's fine. I think it's far from great, and I think 1917 proves that. It is. There's a film that plays just as much with time and actually has a human heart beating at its center for all of its cinematic trickery, and has some point to telling you the story that way, other than, oh look, I can tell the story this way. Dunkirk is cold, as you said, and it is interesting, that we come back to this over and over with Nolan talking about how cold he is, because there are lots of cold directors that are still really interesting, or at least have some semblance of their own coldness and make that the subtext of what they're. Soderbergh's cold. Soderbergh is a cold, cerebral dude, but he understands that on himself, and he understands that it's a failing, and his best films tackle that head on. Nolan, I don't know. I don't understand who Nolan is as a person at all at this point through his films. I know what he is as a name brand director and what I'm supposed to get from his movie as a product, but it's the case where I thought we had a genuine artist on our hand, and we have a craftsman. We have someone who seeks perfection and not expression.
Yeah, I think
that's fine. That's not to be discounted, but it can feel very disappointing when it felt like something else was going on earlier in this career. And watch Tenet be fantastic and we're proven completely wrong. Could happen.
It could happen.
Absolutely happen.
I'm legitimately excited about eventually seeing Tenet. Not enough to put my life at risk, but the big thing he's wanted to do for years that he kind of did at the end of Inception was he's wanted to make a James Bond movie, which I think he is totally wrong for a James Bond movie, because I don't think Christopher Nolan understands sex. It understands the things that make James Bond so much fun when it's fun. But to see him bringing his own brand to that and doing his own espionage movie could be fun. And I have no doubt that from an action perspective, it's a lot of fun. I love the cast. It could be a lot of fun. But that coldness is what I keep coming back to. Like, when I think of what could get me out to a movie theater, I could almost be persuaded in the right circumstances with maybe enough to drink to head back to a movie theater to see Bill and Ted Face the Music. Because I understand what I'm getting with that. I understand there is a certain joy, hopefully, to that, which I haven't seen the movie yet, so I could be totally wrong. It could not be there at all. But there's a certain joy to that experience, seeing that movie with a crowd. Tenet, I'd love to see it. I can't wait to see it. I hope one day I get to see it on a big screen and it's just as spectacular as I would hope it is. But right now, no, that's not getting me there. And to clarify, Bill and Ted ain't getting me there either. But I could almost understand the pull of a Bill and Ted over something that's just,
There's a very real possibility if you bought a ticket in the middle of the day to go see Bill and Ted, you might be the only one in the theater. You might be very safe.
I think Bill and Ted's gonna actually do some money based on whatever money is now at a box office. I think there's a weird excitement that I see people having for that movie that I don't quite have. I have a lot of affection for the first two movies, which is not the same as admiration or thinking that they're good movies, but I think they are perfectly fine, fun movies. And I am perfectly happy to watch Keanu Reeves and Alex Winter do that. I also know that it's been almost 30 years since they last did that, and that it was wearing thin 30 years ago. So I'm not quite expecting greatness at that point.
I almost wanted to take some Irishman approach to it and youngify them 30 years, have them play it as if it's the very next movie just a year later. That might be fun.
Well, maybe
they've got the technology. Why not?
I will probably, as we're recording this, it comes out this weekend, and I can safely say I have a Fandango gift card somewhere that I will probably be using to watch it at home in the comfort of my own home without having to pay actual money for it. Because I do believe someone had told me the screeners for that were available for only 7 hours only the night before its release.
Fantastic.
Which is not a show of confidence.
No.
So.
Or the fact that it doesn't matter.
No, it's Bill and Ted.
This might be the definition of a critic-proof movie.
Yes. But yeah, that's Tenet. We will maybe eventually review it on here if it ever comes our way.
When it tops both of our year-end lists, absolutely.
Which it is very possible, because for all, and I feel like I've come out very negative on Nolan, but I'm not. Like, that's the thing. I think I like a lot of his stuff so much that the flaws bother me more, if that makes sense. Like, I look at it now and I see little things that stick with me because they stick with me because I want that movie to be great. And so something like Inception, which I really like, and which I do think ended up somewhere on my top 10 list that year, like, all I can see is that thing that keeps it from being higher for me.
Yeah, and for me, it's a matter of, I know what it is now. He does not surprise.
Yeah,
he can't, and it's been, I'm much closer to the worst thing he's ever done than the best. So the stench of Dark Knight Rises is just there. Well, it's not blown away yet by anything.
And it's really hard when your career starts off with a Memento. Like something that just is that surprising, and that it felt very radical when I saw it at the time. It felt like nothing I had seen before. And
Steven Soderbergh spent a year, literally, in interviews talking about the movie when it was at festivals, like saying things like, "If this movie can't get distribution in America, I don't understand what the film business is doing anymore." Like, there was high praise on that thing. It was a big deal when it finally came out.
Yeah,
and it absolutely lived up to it. It was great.
Yeah, and when your career starts with that, it's tough to replicate that. But now he's a brand, so that's much different than being an artist.
Yeah.
So, well, I think that brings us to the end of the Nolan discussion. Who knows, by the time this posts, maybe movie theaters will be a little bit more reopened. We probably still will not be there. But where we will be is back here in 2 weeks. We haven't decided what we're talking about yet, but you can find us in 2 weeks. Until then, Perry, where can people find you?
You can find me on Twitter at Perry Loves Film. You can find me on Facebook. You can hear me every Friday morning on the Lucy Ann Lance Show on WLBY in Ann Arbor and on her show online. Just look for it. I'm there, I promise. And, I'm around. You can find me. I'm easy.
You can find me on Twitter at Mere Christianity. You can find me at bhmpopculture.com, where I'm sure my review of Bill and Ted Face the Music is up by now. And yeah, you can also follow my newsletter. It'll be criticisms off of Substack. Sorry. And I'll post that in the show notes, and that'll keep track of any writing, podcasting I'm doing. And we'll see you back in 2 weeks.